Welcome to episode 2 of Ran When Parked, featuring the 1985 Kawasaki ZL900 Eliminator, aka Hens T. The Eliminator was Kawasaki's entry into the Japanese muscle bike wars of the 1980s, though it certainly could be said that Kawi fired the first shot back in '72 with the 900cc Z1.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
The ZL900 started the trend of Kawasaki taking its high-performance street bike engines and stuffing them into long, low, and mean muscle cruisers. It took its mill from the legendary Top Gun bike, the very first Ninja, the GPZ900.
Ninja from Kawasaki. No quarter asked, none given.
Following suit, the 600 Eliminator took its engine from the Ninja 600R, and even the 250cc Eliminator thumbed its nose at the competitor's wheezy single-cylinder 250 beginner cruiser engines, instead slapping the screaming 12,500 RPM red-line 8-valve twin from the Ninja 250R in it. Now, even though the ZL900 borrowed a mill from what was then the fastest production motorcycle in the world, it fell a bit short in the horsepower numbers when compared to its main competition, the VMAX and the V65 Magna. But the ZL900 was much more than just a Ninja motor dressed up in cruiser clothes. It ditched the Ninja's counterbalancer in favor of rubber mounting the engine in a full cradle frame and was set up like a drag bike instead of Honda and Yamaha's laid-back cruisers. It had, at the time, the widest rear tire ever put on a production motorcycle, and it expected anyone who rode the bike to put that sucker to work. Everything about the bike was optimized for stoplight to stoplight street racing. In traditional Kawasaki fashion, they know their fans are hooligans and are more than happy to cater to them. Extra clutch plates and a special diaphragm to absorb the expected repeated hard launches on the street, close gear ratios and cams tuned for torque, and a 62-inch wheelbase allowed the ZL900 to out-accelerate almost anything, including the legendary GPZ900. From stoplight to stoplight at least, it would eventually get past at a true quarter mile or a top speed run by the competition. Still, the Eliminator was unapologetic about what it was, a motorcycle specifically designed to street race and ensure bragging rights on the neon-soaked Saturday night streets of America. Now, this particular Eliminator might have been consigned to the scrapyard, a forgotten relic of another time, just a fading memory, someone's story of who they used to be, a person that grows ever more distant to them as that motorcycle the stranger rode slowly rots away, a victim of neglect, a rusty bookmark on a chapter of life long closed. Well, not if Joe the Mountain Jedi has anything to say about it. Make sure to check out episode 1 of Ran When Parked to see the autopsy of the Eliminator. Now let's see if we can bring this monster back to life.
Okay, jumping right into things. The engine looks better and has looked worse.
It's less naked.
Bank of 4 carburetors on there, and we'll roll that beautiful carburetor footage here pretty soon from a Joe POV.
We've tried a few times to film carburetor rebuild videos, and this time was no exception. Unfortunately, a step-by-step carb rebuild vid with the Mountain Jedi's added tips and tricks clocked in at a solid hour and 15 minutes and really didn't fit into this video. We'll most likely attempt another simpler carb rebuild tips and trick video with a simpler set of carbs, but we're making this ZL900 carb rebuild video available to Patreons of Joe the Mountain Jedi. So if 1 hour of lo-fi ASMR carburetor beats to study to sounds up your alley, consider clicking the link down below and supporting Joe's mission to save classic motorcycles from the scrapyard. Ran When Parked will always be a free show on YouTube, but Joe does offer special tips and tricks and personal mechanical advice to his Patreon supporters. Huge thanks to everyone showing him love over there, but we also appreciate the hell out of everyone out there on the other side of the screen, even if you're just lurking, baby.
That POV feels really neat because that's the POV of what it feels like to know what you're doing.
You ain't seen the video yet, dude.
When you have valve recession, would it set them the same way as you did before?
Yeah, it's no different than doing a normal valve adjustment. The valve recession is just normal wear that's going to happen over the course of time. The thing is there's nothing that you can do to stop it. You know, you can only prolong it. Any overhead cam motorcycle is going to have the potential for sucking the valves up in the head. It's just nature of the beast. The only way that you're going to keep it from doing it is if you don't ever run the motor. And that's kind of counterintuitive.
Defeats the purpose of why it was engineered in the first place.
Right. That's the biggest thing about older bikes like this. I know you and I have talked about it in the past, but the way I look at it, if you buy a bike, you know, like CBX that we raffled off not too long ago, you know, this bike may not have any huge collector value per se compared to a CBX, but it's got a hell of a cult following. It's not a cult. For the record, it's not a cult. I feel that you're doing a disservice to the guys that this is how they made their livelihood. They built this, they designed this, they created this out of their mind, put it down on paper, and then they put it out into a material thing with their own two hands. You're disrespecting the guys that blaze the trail, so to speak, by parking something like this and letting it be a show pony.
And this is the constant battle between engineers and mechanics, but I feel like, seeing as I've seen you do a fair bit of engineering, you probably understand both sides a lot better than most, because I know a lot of engineers that don't take mechanics into account, and I know a lot of mechanics that cuss engineers up and down.
Oh yeah.
And you gotta meet in the middle, okay? There can be harmony if you try.
I'm pretty sure there's some kind of a law against that. You know, it's kind of like when cousins marry or something.
You ever know a mechanic and an engineer to get married? It's illegal in 37 states.
If you buy a motorcycle and you just let it sit and rot to where you can look at it and go, oh, look, isn't it gorgeous? You're doing it a disservice.
It's the third law of thermodynamics, entropy. Everything slowly dissolves towards the void. You might as well have a good time along the way. I see you put a manual cam chain tensioner on it.
That was a just-in-case thing, and that red may spread later on in this bike's tenure with us.
Did you film putting them carbs in?
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen that cussing footage yet. Those carb boots were kind of like Mark Martin in the Viagra car. The competition was stiff.
Honestly, if I had to do it over again, hands down, if this was a customer's bike that I was doing for somebody else, those things would have gotten replaced. I would not have tried to reuse those things. They fought me tooth and nail. They're there, they're solid, they're going to seal up just fine, but man, you talk about a kick in the nuts.
So the suspect metallurgy and the first time doing any kind of overhead valve engine in Kawasaki's history has led to a couple of quirks on this bike that I didn't know about, and something that I thought was just like incredible information for people to have who would otherwise throw these bikes away. Low compression thing, I would have tossed it, dude. I would have 100% been scrapyard, it's done.
Well, the thing is, this isn't Cowie's first foray into an overhead cam, overhead valve setup. I mean, man, that came about back in the 70s with the original Z900. This was one of their earliest forays into, you know, 4-valve per cylinder technology, and they thought they were doing good because they were using one cam load to work 2 valves because both valves had to open and close at the same time. It's just they missed the mark just a little bit here and there, and they had some teething problems with it. There's a ton of aftermarket companies that back in the day, they made bank by selling valves and hardened rocker arm followers for these things, hard welding cams, regrind cams, valve springs, da-da-da-da-da. Back in the day, Orient Express, Star Racing, I mean, Muzzies, this was a cash cow for them. And I'm not saying that in a bad way towards those guys because they saw a problem, they addressed it, they attacked it, and they fixed it. They did good for the community. It's kind of tragic that Kawasaki pulled the plug on these bikes as soon as they did instead of furthering on with their development cycle with them like they have with other historical models like the ZX6 Ninja, the ZX750 Ninja, which turned into the ZX7, the ZX10. Started out as a big chunky, you know, heavyweight top speed bike, and then all of a sudden, you know, somebody fed it a bunch of Slim Fast and it went to Jenny Craig, and I better not say that because somebody's gonna get mad at me, but
speaking of mad, we got people in the comments just talking trash on Kawasaki. I think it goes, Kawa made of tin, ride it out and push it in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that's any motorcycle from back in the 70s and 80s. They all had their quirks, and that includes Hondas, Suzuki's, definitely Harley Davidsons. I just think it's hilarious because everyone's so ready to talk crap about somebody else, but at the end of the day, they all had their issues, including every single one of the big four.
I still blame AMF's tenure at Harley Davidson for the reason why we can buy cereal in bags, because they bought up all the cardboard boxes.
Oh, for gaskets?
Yeah, they had to seal them up somehow.
Well, seeing as you're gapping spark plugs, I'd say that that this making motorcycle noises might be possible.
These are used plugs, and these plugs got used for a grand total of about 5 minutes.
Lightly used. That's our motto around here.
They're pre-tested.
They all work.
Yeah, we've already gone through QC on these. Threaded them for 3/8 pipe thread, and I put a pipe plug in them.
Nice.
95% of all of your decel pop on most metric motorcycles, it's caused by that secondary air injection system. And the theory behind it is you chop the throttle and you're coasting down on the motor. It was supposed to allow fresh air into the exhaust system to help afterburn any unburnt fuel that may have been built up in the exhaust system and thusly reduce emissions. That sounds all great and cool and keeps everybody happy in the land of Honolulu, but for one, I don't like it. It sounds like crap. If your neighbors are really neurotic, it makes them duck behind the couch for cover at times. A bike shouldn't have to sound like it's fixing to explode to run correctly. Now, as far as the drivability aspect of it goes, blocking off that secondary air, it will not improve anything whatsoever with how the bike runs, but the only thing where you might see any benefit is it may keep your chrome on your exhaust from discoloring a little bit if you've got aftermarket exhaust that's got single wall pipes with no heat shields.
Which, and I'm a Super Trap stan. Super Trap is very fond of doing. Hey, look at that. $30, Harbor Freight. Get you one. We're gonna start putting part numbers for a lot of this Harbor Freight stuff, putting the SKUs down below so you guys can find the stuff that we use, the royal we, that Joe uses in the videos. That way you can get it easy and know you're getting the right thing.
Hey, another good Harbor Freight buy, grab while you're there. That.
Good old Rotella.
That is good for any metric motorcycle, you know, like this, anything like that. Now, obviously, there's bikes out there that spec a 20W50, like my Roadstar. That's one of them. I got to put a zinc additive in with my oil in my Roadstar, and there's a couple of other models that really need a zinc additive in there. But for the most part, on a bike like this, you know, anything newer-ish, say 1980 or newer, plain Jane off-the-shelf Rotella is perfectly fine. It will not make your clutch slip. It does have a considerably higher level of zinc in it than what motorcycle oils do because it's designed for a diesel engine application. It's kind of a win-win because you get all the good stuff that you need and none of the bad crap that you don't, and you're not bleeding money right and left doing it.
Don't be afraid to put diesel oil in your motorcycle. You can get that same jug at Wally World. Heavy-duty diesel oil application.
Meets requirements for Allison, Caterpillar, Cummins, DDC, LMNOP, Gesundheit. I can't say that word in good conscience. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So if you guys remember, we had some pretty fancy upgrades on this thing, including these bright yellow Excel coils for a hotter spark, which probably just for these coils probably retail for a couple $100 for that upgrade for that hot spark. But Joe the Mountain Jedi has a much cheaper, much better, much more modern upgrade for us here. So why don't you roll me through the thought process on what we got sticking out the top of this thing right here?
That's simple. These are stick coils from a 04 to 07 Kawasaki ZX-10. Hey, it's dumpster dive technology. You're eliminating your plug wire. You've got a coil that clips directly onto the plug. So instead of having 2 coils, you've got 4 now. Now, the benefit of that is these coils are going to be up above the cylinder head somewhat, where they're going to have the same amount of airflow of what the Excel coils did, but we're eliminating the possibility of flashover from spark plug wires that may be laying too close to the head or may have a rub spot in them. Not to mention the fact that if you lose one of these coils, you're only going to drop 1 cylinder, whereas with the Excel setup, since they're a paired coil, if you lose a coil, you lose 2 out of 4.
Now, I wouldn't have thought that this was even possible. I would have thought these stick coils would take a whole computer controller, but you say you can wire them right into the stock harness, huh?
Yep, sure can. It's all about Ohm's law. What you have to do is you have to keep your coils paired up with the cylinders the way that they would have normally fired stock or stock-ish type ignition coils, and you have to wire them in series because these are a 1.5 ohm coil. You can't wire them in parallel or else the resistance is going to be too low and it's going to overwork the crap out of the CDI box. Poof, it's going to smoke, and then you're shopping for parts. So what you do is you wire these in series. You take your positive and you go into the positive on one side, where you come out on the negative side, that comes over and goes to the positive on its buddy coil, and then the negative comes off of that and goes back into the harness for a grand total of 3 ohms worth of load, just like the original coils had.
There was a whole lot of comments that said you couldn't really do anything to these bikes. They go like, yeah, you can spend $1,500 and get 5 horsepower. I saw a bunch of those. I'm saying those guys who said that, all you've ever looked at is what's available online as a power package kit that you buy and somebody else puts together. That ain't what's happening to this bike here.
When I still had my FZR 600, my hot coil upgrade on that, it came off of a Ford Escort.
That's a story for a different day.
I almost fucked up.
Horseshoes, hand grenades.
Thermonuclear devices. Okay, now I pulled my head out of my ass and I got this wired the right way. They're itty bitty. There we go.
Oh, this is already looking beyond my ken, although I assume it is actually pretty simple.
It's a little ugly and it's got stuff flopping in the breeze right now because this is kind of the proof of concept phase, if you will. After I make sure that this thing runs and make sure it runs the way that I'm expecting it to, then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna pretty everything up, heat shrink everything, get it all wrapped up in some harness tape and everything. By the time I'm done with it, it'll look like it came from the factory that way. Something fixing to happen.
Fight in the comments about it below. We'll do a dedicated oil video another day when we feel like being masochists. Start placing your bets now, gentlemen. There's flammable liquids attached to the handlebars.
This is where having a clear fuel filter comes in handy because you see how you got all the little bubbles dancing around in there? When they stop moving around, that's when you know all your floats are up. If they don't ever stop moving around, you need to look at your shoes because you're probably standing in a lake full of gas. Right like that there, it stopped. All right, cool, let's see what happens.
We got turn signals still.
Well, I'm trying to make it shut up. Oh, I got a vacuum leak here. Hang on.
I heard something thump though.
We got a fart and a promise out of it.
I've been on that kind of date before.
Okay. Looky there. Whoa. Dude, y'all talking about firing right up, dude. Nice.
Dude, that fired like right up, dude. That was wild.
Once you clear all the smog out of there.
Ran when parked. Damn, that sounds good, dude. Back from the dead. Of course, what is dead may never die. Dude, the motor is so quiet. Especially an 80s Japanese motor, it's incredibly quiet.
Sounds good. Let's let it run for a little bit and see if it quits that smoking.
All right, the tail of the tape. Let's see how close Joe the Mountain Jedi got on his bench tune. I'm willing to bet, because I've seen you do this before, you got it pretty damn close on the bench, but close ain't perfect.
Well, it didn't give us a whole lot of drama popping off and running for the first time, so we can't be that far off base.
And don't worry, we're gonna do a whole video on how to completely tune your carbs and do this. I know it looks like a big old mess of spaghetti up here, but I promise you, I've seen Joe do it before, and I think if I watched him do it 2 more times, I could probably do it myself. It is not as hard as it looks.
Well, it looks like a plumbing nightmare because it is. But once you see how it's done and once you see why you're doing it, it'll all make sense. Let's see what we can see. Side to side splits off pretty good.
Look like that smoke cleared right up, huh?
It's working at it. I'm hoping that's just a bunch of crap and everything that was built up in the motor from somebody trying to start it and it running over. That sounds cleaner. Now we gotta let it warm up all the way because you never set your carb sync before the motor's totally warmed up. If you want it to run good and run smooth and everything for the first 5 minutes when you start the bike, sure, go ahead and do it. I'm worried about what it's gonna do after I've been riding it for 50 miles.
I hate to say it sounds like it's brand new, but it does. The motorcycle doesn't sound like it has any miles on it at all.
I still got one over here on this half that's kind of Probably a good idea to make sure that it's actually putting juice back into the battery. We bought this thing as a non-runner and there wasn't any way to protect it for it at the time.
Just needed a little TLC.
It's getting hot. It's cooking oil off the bottom of the motor. That's the difference between it being close enough and bang on the money exact whenever you've got a set of carbs dialed in.
If your bike don't start up right like that, there's something wrong with your bike.
That starter's not even turning the motor over a full revolution before it's hitting and running.
Well, Joe, I'll tell you, the fact that you're able to stand over here and say, damn, that's hot.
Yeah.
That's a good sign, man.
Don't grab that. That's hot.
It makes motorcycle noises. That's a big hurdle pass for Ran when parked.
It makes very good motorcycle noises.
That is hot.
Yeah, told you.
Let me put my hand somewhere else. What's the other thing you always see in ads? Just needs a little TLC.
Yeah, just needs cleaned up.
Yeah.
Just needs the carb sprayed out.
Well, this really did just need a little bit of TLC. But this, I promise you, if somebody else had bought it who didn't know as much as Joe, like if I had just bought it myself, this thing probably would have been headed to the scrapyard because I would have checked that cylinder that blew 30 pounds and said, no freaking way, this thing is junk, I got scammed. And as it is, y'all heard the same bike run that I heard run. It
Ain't
sounds
dead
amazing.
until it's buried, man.
Make sure you stay tuned for the next episode of Ran with Parked with Joe the Mountain Jedi, because running on the lift is only one half of the equation.
Exactly. We got it to go, now we got to get it to whoa.
There's a lot left to do, and I also want to let you guys know real quick that there's a link down below if you'd like to support Joe the Mountain Jedi and also get access to some of that amazing knowledge. His Patreon link is down below. Click on the link, check it out, consider supporting him. We'll always do this for free. This will always be a 100% free show, but if you'd like just a little bit extra or just to help out, that link's down below. We appreciate every single one of you guys. And if you don't have any extra money to support Joe, that's totally fine. We still appreciate the hell out of you guys. You can share the video, you can leave a like on it, and always make sure to let us know what you thought and what you'd like to see next in the comments down below. We'll see y'all in the next one.
Ain't got no gas in it.